Welcome, everyone. I'm Laura DeFranco, the CEO of Brave Healer Productions, where we're changing the world one brave word at a time. Listen, you guys, I have a mission to wake the world up to what's possible for healing. And here today to help me with that mission is Amy Dougherty Gillespie, the lead author of one of our newest book titles, The Ancestors Within: Discover and Connect with Your Ancient Origins. This is the second powerful book in a series that's meant to help you understand what's possible in terms of ancestral healing. Welcome, Amy.
Thank you, Laura. I'm really excited to be here.
So you guys, Amy created Irogenics, ancestral eye reading, as a survival skills program for teens and young adults in an effort to reduce self-destructive behaviors and suicide patterns. She believes in the power of the ancestral pulse within each of us and our ability to reach the best of our best. And you guys are going to see just what that is here in a minute. Amy, I just want you to tell everyone a little bit about your story. Like, you know, you do some very, very unique things in this world of ancestral healing and are one of only, I don't know, you tell me if it's 4 or 5 people you've trained in your Irogenics system. Tell us about how you even got here.
Yeah, it's a road less traveled. So I'm adopted. I was adopted at birth through Catholic Charities, and I grew up I grew up on the farm with a lovely family, my brother and sister and my parents. And my sister actually came along a little late. My brother and I are both adopted. My sister came along when I was 8 years old, when we were 8 and 9. And unfortunately, a few years later, she died in an accident where she was crawling through a camper window, and the window came down on her neck. And I found her. I was just about 11, and um, and when I pulled her from the window, she was dead weight, which I was not expecting. And of course, and the two of us fell to the ground, and she died right there with me. And it gave me this guilt, as if I didn't have enough guilt growing up in a whole variety of ways. But it just gave me this guilt that was just kind of unconquerable. And, I had started off life, I want to find my family. I want to find my family. I was the runaway queen when I was 5 and 6 and 7. And what I didn't realize is what I wanted to find was me. I wanted to find what was my nationality. Why did I have a gift for music? Why did I have two different colored eyes? What I really wanted to find was me. And in the years, of my young life, going through a number of careers, I never really quite found that spot. Well, then, in my late 30s, I wound up in Mozambique, Africa, doing survival skills training for kids because I felt like kids really needed to have the skills to keep themselves and their brothers and sisters alive when their parents didn't have it. Not that my parents did, but in Africa, the parents did. And so I really felt like I wanted to bring that to the world. And when I came back, I wanted to continue working with kids. I wanted to continue the survival skills in America. And I thought, well, what is it that is causing trouble for kids in America? And it was really the self-destructive patterns and the suicide patterns. And then it was just rampant in this country where we have access to so many gifts and tools. And so I took a class with this guy who was teaching about conscious language and about how our subconscious screams, through the words that we use. So we can say, I'm choosing to go to the gym, or we can say, I decided to go to the gym. Well, there's decide, homicide, suicide, genocide, insecticide, pesticide. When you decide, you're killing one of the options. And so this is kind of just a tiny piece of kind of how his whole subconscious language worked. But he was reading eyes. He had a program called biooptic holography, and he was looking at eyes and showing how behaviors, etc., were coming through what he could see in the eyes. And I thought, well, that's the coolest thing ever, right? I mean, we're born with our own little DVD. Here's this little this little DVD we can look at, and we can plug it in, and we can start playing what's going on in there. And but all the way, I felt something was missing. Something just didn't add up. How could somebody be born with a mark and sibling rivalry when they didn't have any sisters or brothers yet? Was their eye going to keep changing? What was going to happen? And so I kept going from one methodology to another, to another, to another, until I got to a man who was working with grandparents and great grandparents. And I was like, that's what's missing. It's our grandparents' issue with sibling rivalry, whether they were genetic or legal brothers and sisters, or whether they were um, other street kids or other kids in boarding school or other kids on the football team. It was whoever was acting as siblings in their world. And so finally, everything started snapping in. And the power of how much you can see in your life is actually ancestral, and tone down that inner blame game just became a really huge aspect of my work.
Wow. Okay. So for somebody who has never even heard of this, I'll call it a modality, tell us a little bit more about the ancestral eye reading and really the way that you've developed the reading and how it helps us. Just tell us a little bit more about that.
Sure. So, as I said, basically what we're looking at is the eyes kind of act like a DVD. They're the only thing that's full size when we're born. Everything else we have to grow into.
I love that stat.
Oh, right?
Like, yeah.
So this is why some babies look like they have these huge eyes, right? Because they're full size. So basically, it's like looking at the cover of Transformers or Love Actually, Star Wars. You plug it into the DVD coder and it plays the movie, it plays a trailer. So basically, what I do is I take a macro photograph of the eyes and I'm looking at what were you born with? Gifts, talents, abilities, um, some energetic patterns, where maybe you're really sensitive to other people, or maybe you really kind of pick up stuff from other people and from the planet and that kind of thing, where you can just tell there's a tsunami. Even though you don't know there's a tsunami, you just feel jacked up. You're like, I don't know what it is. There's something weird going on right now, and I can't put my finger on it. And so it's really learning to honor that intuition. And so it's the gifts, talents, ability, but also the unresolved traumas. So COVID is this time when we're getting this just huge amount of ancestral patterns to look at. I mean, when since the Civil War have people been brother against brother, vaccinated against unvaccinated, masked against unmasked, the White House being with barbed wire? When have we seen times like this in the past? So we look at Spanish flu and we go, oh, yeah. Well, so it works like this. During the time of Spanish flu, people being isolated might have meant death. It might have meant a huge trauma in our family because they couldn't get supplies, they couldn't get whatever. Now we have something isolating us. We have COVID isolating us. But now we have Zoom. We have Amazon. We can order our groceries. We can still reach our family members online. And so it's kind of like our own very, very, very personal evolution, the evolution of the DNA strands that we're tied to. And each of us is tied to a completely unique set of ancestors. Even identical twins have different ancestral threads. They have different fingerprints. And so as you go through, you find that people being isolated now is not such an issue. So it tones down a bit. But those people who were super fired up about no toilet paper at Walmart, those people, they're revisiting that pattern. And this gives us an opportunity to really have compassion for someone else. Because when someone else is having that screaming moment, you never listen to me. What am I gonna do? They're having an ancestral moment. And you get to just honor it for that. To go, wow, this must have been a big deal for their ancestors. Their ancestors must have been hugely impacted and threatened, whether they know it or not, whether they have any idea who their ancestors were or not. They're being hugely impacted right now. And I'm just going to let them breathe and give them some room rather than engaging. Because when I engage it, I'm feeding my own evolution saying, this is still a problem for us. When I come back with a fight, I'm saying, oh, yeah, this is a threat. This is a problem. So we get a chance to stop and say, what really is threat? And what is
So, okay, this is perfect because it kind of gets me to the next question I wanted to ask you about the mission of your book series. But honestly, what you're helping everybody do is you're giving us a gift of awareness, another way to look at those problems, those repeat patterns. So in the first book in our series, we really talked about those cyclical repeat patterns and like how to even see that they're there. And then what do you do with them? But all under the umbrella of a look through ancestral healing. So now we have the second book. Talk to me a little bit about this bigger mission with this whole book series.
Terrific. So the second book is Discover and Connect with Your Ancient Origins. So for people, I kind of thought, well, most people will recognize, if they don't recognize their own ancestral patterns, they'll certainly recognize it about their sister or their cousin or their mother-in-law, right? You know, she always gets upset about this kind of thing. Um, so the second book was to take us back and say, okay, if you don't know who your ancestors are, then let's look at some ways to discover them within yourself. And what was great, or what is great in this book, is that we had a number of authors who really addressed either not knowing who your ancestors are, but recognizing them in your world and the world around you, but also recognizing them in um, people who have ancestors that they don't like. I mean, let's face it, serial killers have great grandchildren, right? Mass murderers have family. Even if it's a shared ancestor going up, to their parent, somewhere there's relatives. And so we really had a number of authors who addressed that in this book, which I thought was great. The whole package, as you said, Laura, the next two books next year are going to be about discovering and engaging your ancient gifts. Those people who do some artisan crafts that you're like, wow, where did you learn how to leather work like that? Where did you learn how to do Cirque du Soleil, the trapeze like that? Because I see that in people's eyes all the time, this high level athletic prowess training. So where did that ancient skill come from? And then how to celebrate and honor our ancestors. So the whole package, 4 books, is all about the numerous, numerous ways to experience our ancestors and discover how they're in our lives and how we can tap that energy and that support system. Because we're loaded up. We came in with those eyes full size, right? We came in with that package fully undeveloped or fully resting within us to be expressed, whether it's the traumas or whether it's the gifts, and we can choose which one, right? So when we choose to bring out those gifts, sometimes we bring some really unique things back into the world.
The authors who are stepping up to be in these projects are amazing. So if you guys are listening, thank you for saying yes to this and for contributing your brilliant, brave words to these books. I think that I want people to know how profound and powerful this community is, on top of just the fact that we published a couple of books, right? And you and all of them are there to help people with their questions. I know that I've learned a thing or two reading through the chapters, and now you're going to chuckle, but I do walk around the house and feel it in myself and think, all right, was that grandpa? Was that grandma? Was that great? I think about it now. I was not thinking about it before. It just wasn't in my awareness. So I didn't have the opportunity to think about it like that. This morning, I was looking at some biscotti that I bought from Trader Joe's. And I'm like, Grandma, you made way more better biscotti than Trader Joe's, and I was just like having that kind of conversation. But that's because of what the authors have taught me and what you have taught me. So that next book in the series is One Thing Coming, but you've got a summit too. Talk about this.
So from November 7th to 11th of 2022, there's going to be an Ancestral Summit with all of our authors and artists participating, and it's 101 voices and perspectives of ancestral connection. And the idea is, again, to just give you this wealth of opportunities of different ways. As you said, Laura, now you find yourself kind of questioning, where did I get this from? Where did this come from? And in this particular book, I wrote about ancestral eye reading, but in the first, I wrote about being adopted and meeting my genetic family as an adult, and how many synchronicities were there that there's no way we could have known. There's absolutely no way that I could have known my father was profiling fingerprints while I was profiling eyes. That the next cousin, as I'm the oldest cousin, the next cousin is 7 years younger than me, and she's the executive director of the eye bank. She handles getting eyes to people who need eyes donated to them. unbeknownst to any of us. And it keeps going. Each one of my cousins took a career and a skill set that I thought about and considered, every one of them right down to the college. And so this getting to recognize that the ancestors are in your world and within you, I mean, I sing French songs in the kitchen. I don't know French. Like, do you think that's a real song? I think, do you think that's something my grandmother or great grandmother sang? That I think I'm just humming something I made up? We just had bigger eyes. If we could just be, way up there looking down on our world and see how many things are repeated, which you get to see in families that are large families, but then they all know they're related. You know what I mean? For those of us who didn't know, we're kind of guessing. Or when we get back. So there are 254 ancestors in 7 generations. Pretty much none of us know our ancestral threads. We don't know all those little quirky gifts along the way. And that's really some of the fun. And in 400 years, we have 4,000 ancestors. So the odds that when we're having that argument with somebody at the checkout line, or feeling disgruntled with the United Airlines person across the counter, or whatever you're having going on, the chance that they're coming off an ancestral thread that's tied to ours somewhere in the last 2,000 years is pretty good. It's pretty good. Maybe they bumped into each other at Ellis Island, right? I mean, we don't know.
So you educate this way a lot, and it's like all of those, I'll call them trigger moments for now. And we see, it's easy for us to look at it outside of us and see it in other people, right? And catching it in yourself is really a big opportunity. But you're saying that in those, again, I'll just call them triggery, in those triggery moments, that would be the opportunity for us to kind of wake up for a minute and recognize an ancestral pattern. Are you going to say all of those are that?
Maybe not all. New threats come into our world.
Okay.
New threats come into our world, but we have an opportunity to, as you said, be self-aware and just stop and say, where is this coming from? Have I been here before? If you've been here before, if it's something that only happens to you, ancestral. But if it's just something that hits your trigger, you get a chance to stop and just take a look at it. One pattern that comes up a lot is regarding the matriarch and patriarch, the father and mother figures. And that's in our world, it's a matter of transitioning those words. So in our world, that'll show up as, no matter what I do, it's not good enough for that man or that woman. Well, this is what our ancestor was saying in 1725 about the headmistress of the orphanage, or their ice skating coach, or, you know what I mean, whoever it was, who was that stepmother or stepfather.
This is such a big one. This one is so big. And now that I would imagine is all of us probably.
Yeah, it's true. And it can be your employee, it can be your child. It doesn't have to be someone older than you. It doesn't have to be someone in a parenting role. But it's one of those patterns that is really, and you never listen to me. I feel like I'm not heard again. And so what I found in my eye reading is, as you look into the eye photograph, so many times there are very apparent images of ancestors in the eyes, just in their life doing what they're doing. If you go to spirogenics.com, there's an eye on the front cover, and there's a guy doing a karate kick. There's another person wearing a cowboy hat. There's a ship's captain person talking to his family. There's images that are very, very clear and apparent. And that's when everything kind of changed with my work, where I was like, oh my gosh, who are these people showing up in the eyes? And, it's just that moment of them saying, ooh, I love you. And in that moment when you felt like you weren't heard by that patriarch, matriarch, oh, I know that one. I'm here with you. I know that one. I went through that. And so when you have impossible relationships, it's a great time to just put tons of blessings on your ancestors for the lives they lived. They didn't have a light switch and drinkable water in the tap, right? They didn't have cell phones and online. You just put a ton of love back there for whichever ancestor might have had this situation before you, and just see how much it just kind of lets down. How much someone who's never talked to you suddenly is very friendly. A job that, an application that was never going through suddenly just happens. And most of our authors will tell you they've been through some wild situations after being in these books. Like all of a sudden their lives have changed substantially just because of that immense recognition of, our ancestors have waited our whole lives for this moment. and our next. And when they live in that place, like, wow, there's somebody back behind me cheering me on, especially for those who feel unsupported, those who are feeling, in a self-destructive or suicidal place, that support system is in here, right? It's inside and it's yours. You're wired with it. You were wired with it from before your first day. It's just a great awareness.
I love the big feeling of this, the celebration of the healing, the idea that awareness practice that we put into place now is helping heal generations out in all directions, where the work we do today, just in simply noticing these things, matters. And it matters in big ways, like ways we don't maybe never thought of before. That's what these books are doing for me.
Love that. Because I remember some of our first conversations about ancestors. And like you said about triggers, the thing about a trigger is what a trigger tells us, no matter where it comes from, is that something is up. Something's not healed yet. Something is causing us trauma and drama. Now, if it's a real threat, if somebody's holding a gun to your head at the door, that's a real threat. But we don't have too many of those in the average day. And so when we find that we're being triggered, what we're finding, and what I find in the eyes, is that the places that are marked with triggers are places that are available to heal during this lifetime. And so it's really just human evolution. It's our evolution saying, not being listened to is still a threat to our family. It still causes drama and trauma, right? And so when we don't engage that, we're saying, not a threat anymore. And it's really kind of that simple. The more we can breathe into it and go, wow, that's ancestral, that's definitely ancestral. The more you can put a little humor in there and a little levity, the more these things just water down and out. Like you said, this is, a gift that goes around the world. Because if I have 4,000 ancestors in 400 years, I mean, I was over 2,000 years ago. If I've got 4,000 in 400 years and you do, then as we go through, somewhere I'm touching your ancestors, somewhere your healing is touching mine. And so as we kind of start to have a little more compassion about everybody, and that in that moment, they're having an ancestral moment. And wow, somebody must have been seriously affected by this kind of situation at some time. And just let them heal. Like you do someone who's sick in the hospital, let them heal. Just give them that room, let them have that space, and give them that compassionate heart that we would also give to someone who's laying in a hospital bed in a hospital. Just give them that compassion for a minute. Give yourself some compassion for a minute and let things. And I think our authors, so far in the first two books and going forward, have just been phenomenal at that work, like really specific ancestral aspects of getting in and setting new intentions and sometimes clearing traumas, in different ways to clear traumas. They've really been a phenomenal force inside of these books.
That's amazing. Thank you. You guys, I hope you feel the big feel here about this. It's a big deal. We can't wait to share the next book with you. But Amy, you have a lot going on besides that. Is there anything you want to tell us about in terms of what's going on in your world?
So I will be a vendor at Soul Treat in Boone, North Carolina, at the amazing 4-day weekend retreat, including we're going to be doing a closing ancestral healing ceremony that I'm really excited about. We're going to do something that any one of you could do at home, which is we're going to be using cards that have flower seeds in them. And we're going to be setting an intention for something we want to create with our ancestors in 2022. And then we will plant the card and let the flowers bloom in the spring as our ancestral energies bloom. And so that's going to be a very exciting event. Also involved in 1111 Unified, going to be presenting about ancestral eye reading and eugenics. And also I have become a columnist for the Edge magazine in Minneapolis, where they do a lot of holistic articles showing people new ways that might seem edgy at first, but it's going to be an exciting place to share about the ancestors. And I'm also, as Laura mentioned in the beginning, training people on how to do eugenics ancestral eye reading. I've worked typically the holistic shows and expos, including Pathways and the ARE and Illuminate festivals. And I've gotten so when I come in, I have a line from start to finish, and it's just time for me to step back and do this training realm, which I love, and the writing, and letting other people actually bring this work into whatever work they're already doing with at-risk teens or those who need healing modalities. And so just a lot of pieces happening, as you said, kind of all at the same time. Busy.
Well, so Amy already mentioned, and we have you hooked up down in the show notes, irrigenics.com. Okay, so explore, take a step. If this is interesting to you, go explore a little further. Amy, thank you so much for what you're doing in the world and for being here today to share it with everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for Brave Healer Productions and your commitment to bringing these, brave new pathways to the world. And I can't believe I almost forgot. Please feel free to catch up with us on Facebook at
I got you.
Ancestors Within Community.
I got you. I'm
Awesome.
going to give them all kinds of information about it. You guys, this is such a generous community. So we got you hooked up down there with that too. Okay. Yeah. Tell them a little bit more about that.
So the community is there for anyone who has interest in ancestry and ancestral aspects. All of the authors of the books are available and answering questions in there, and they post their events and things coming up. But as a member, you can also participate by bringing in ancestral aspects. It's not necessarily for those, for example, doing readings, etc., if they haven't been an author. But if you've got something really cool going on with ancestry, we'd love to hear about it. We'd love to, learn more about you, and we'd love to invite you into future books and into the Ancestral Summit. So it's a great place to connect and kind of see the, what is it? Laura calls it the ancestral jam, right? And it's really just a fun, uplifting place to be.
Awesome. Thank you, Amy. All right, you guys. So don't forget to join us for our book party on October 27th at noon Eastern, where we're going to have all the authors on live stream to chat about this book. You guys are going to find that on the Brave Healer Productions Facebook page, which is also linked up there here in the show notes. And if you're listening after that particular date, well, then hop over to Amazon, because that means you can grab your copy of this amazing book, The Ancestors Within, Discover and Connect with Your Ancient Origins. And Amy told you about the Facebook group. Please take advantage of joining. Okay, I've got you hooked up with that link as well. The Ancestors Within community, really, really powerful community that Amy is bringing together to learn and grow and evolve and expand and all of the awesome things. Lastly, today, everybody remember, your words change the world when you're brave enough to share them. It's time to be brave, you guys. See you next time. Thanks, Amy.